be hard to change that about myself.
Yeah, I think give me like 30 seconds and Hari, നീ ഒന്ന് നോക്കാം അവിടെ യൂട്യൂബ് ലൈവ് ആയോന്ന് മ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ട്.
And probably double check the audio as well.
Yes, it's അല്ല സോ ഞാൻ പ്രീമിയം ഗൂഗിൾ മീറ്റ് എടുത്തു ലൈക്ക് ഗൂഗിൾ വൺ മെമ്പർഷിപ്പ് എടുത്തു. സോ വി ക്യാൻ റെക്കോർഡ് ദിസ് മീറ്റിംഗ് ആസ് ഇസ്. സോ നീ പറഞ്ഞത് കാര്യമായി. Okay, welcome everyone to the 29th episode of the SCT North America podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Reeja Jayan. She is from the 2002 batch Electronics and Communication. Really happy to have her here. ഇതുവരെ നമ്മുടെ പോഡ്കാസ്റ്റിലെ ഏറ്റവും സീനിയർ ആളാണ് and probably the most high profile person we've had so far. Before we get to her introduction, ബാക്കിയുള്ളവരെ introduce ചെയ്യാം. My name is Atul John. I'm from 2008-2012 batch Electronics and Communication. ഇപ്പം സിസ്കോയിൽ സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയർ എഞ്ചിനീയർ ആയിട്ട് വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നു in the San Francisco Bay Area.
My name is Ashwini Nair. I'm also from the 2008-2012 batch and from the Biotechnology and Biochemical Engineering department. Currently, I'm in Ontario, Canada, working as a validation specialist in the pharmaceutical industry.
Hi, this is Tariq. Sorry, Hari, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, എൻ്റെ പേര് ഹരി. 2008-2012 batch. ഞാൻ ഇപ്പോൾ ആമസോണിൽ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നു in Seattle.
Hi, this is Tariq, 2008 mechanical. Did my MBA from IIM Bangalore. Currently working with Deloitte Consulting in mergers and acquisitions in San Francisco.
Hi, my name is Prem Kumar. I'm currently a 2008-2012 mechanical. I did my master's from IIT Roorkee in material science, and currently I'm in Canada working for Commissioners Great Lakes.
Yeah, and so let's get to our guest today. Reeja, if you can give a quick introduction.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me on this podcast. I am Reeja Jayan. I am currently an associate professor of mechanical engineering at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, USA. And I also have courtesy appointments in material science and engineering, chemical engineering, electrical and computer engineering. And that's because at CMU, my institution, we believe that there should not really be boundaries between disciplines. Engineering is engineering, and to solve big problems that we are faced with today, to give an example, climate change, we should not be siloed into disciplinary boundaries. That said, my research is about identifying ways by which we can reduce the amount of energy that we consume when we make materials, whether these are metals or ceramics or plastic, any type of material. Some of the applications of interest in my group are focused around ceramics or metal oxides. These go into lithium-ion batteries for energy storage, and they have a lot of other applications in industrial, machine tooling, transportation, and so on. So I would say my work is 75% about leading a research team. That also makes me a fundraiser and wearing a lot of other hats. 25% of my time is on teaching, and the rest of my time is to do everything else I have to do as a human being. I was originally an ECE, what they call ECE here, but what they call electronics and telecommunications back in India. That was my undergrad, and over the years, I have had a very non-linear path into other fields of engineering, science, philosophy even, and here we are, right? So happy to talk to everyone today.
Yeah, thanks for being on our podcast. Maybe we can start off with some easy questions from Ashwini. Do you want to get started?
Yeah, since you mentioned about all these disciplines that you're forayed into, my question was, even now, like we are typecast into like different departments, right? There's mechanical, chemical, like even now. So how did you find it navigating through all these disciplines back then and now? And is it like as intimidating as it sounds, like from mechanical to chemical to material science to electronics to computer chemical engineering. Like for someone who has been used to this, they would feel like, oh, this is a lot.
Yeah. Before I answer your question, Ashwini, I am in Ontario right now. I'm
Oh, really?
Oh,
visiting friends an hour outside Toronto. I'm not exactly sure where I am. This is my first time in this part, but
Right.
that's where I am. But it is intimidating because we spent 4 years as an undergraduate learning a lot about one discipline, right? And somehow things could have changed. Everything's my perspective, and this perspective is very dated. Um, when I was a student, it was like, if you are ECE, you can do this job, right? And that's what you're good for, and this is your skill set. And maybe you can retrain yourself and learn another um, programming language. That's it. So when I came here and I had to make all these changes, I was intimidated. But I had two things going for me. One was I am a person who's very interested in taking risks and doing things just to do it, right? So when I got interested in material science, I knew I had to learn, new concepts, intensive courses in thermodynamics, chemistry, phase transformations, the structure of materials, and so on and so on. And I was like a little child standing, on the coastline, staring into the ocean. I'm very intimidated. And my professor, who became my PhD advisor, Dr. Arumugam Mantharam, told me that this is the only way I'm going to hire you. I cannot work with the ECE admin department and sign 200 forms on your behalf. You want to work for me, you move over to the Texas Materials Institute, which is their equivalent of the Department of Material Science. So he gave me, he told me, like, if you say yes, that's your offer letter. I said, okay, fine, I'm doing it. And then I had to figure out I had to take another 2 additional years of coursework, go through the qualifying exam, and so on. I mean, I think it changed my life, that decision, because when I did my postdoc, I did that in chemical engineering, and CMU decided, okay, we should hire you into mechanical engineering because you don't have a degree in mechanical engineering, but you have every other degree under the planet, right, except biomedical. So let's hire you. And so it was one difficult, like you said, Ashwini, intimidating decision, and a few years which were brutal. But after that, I got, braver, more risk taking, and I still do. I think just a week ago, I was trying to learn more about process control, and that's
Right.
something to do with scaling up some of the work that we were doing. And I was like, oh my God, I should study more. And then I realized that some of that has aspects of management into it, coming into it. And my husband, who's an MBA, and I asked him, what would you feel like if I, take an MBA? And he said, yeah, not bad. He said, the two kids, the second child being 5 months old doesn't worry you? He said, no. I think he was sleepy, but doesn't matter. But my point is, I'm still trying to figure out new disciplines to learn. And I believe that's the way for everyone. And these days, learning is democratized, right? You have edX and Coursera, and everything's at your fingertip. You're the only one standing in your path. So I hope that's the way of the future, that we can all learn new disciplines, and and find our own way of thinking. Because when I was an ECE coming into material science, I brought a different perspective. And when I became a faculty and I was looking for a research grant, my first grant from the Air Force Office of Scientific Research came to me because I was bringing that perspective. Because I was the only ECE who applied to that program. There were 200 applicants from material science. So, I think strange luck falls into your lap in those cases. So hope that makes sense.
So since you've talked about materials, Prem, I think your MTech was in materials, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So I had it was last year, I guess. Professor Manthiram actually visited IIT Roorkee.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it was really amazing to know that you've done your PhD under him. Even I at one point tried applying to TAMU for doing PhD under him, Yeah, it's good to know. So, what was your experience transitioning from uh, electronics and communication to, different domains such as material science? Uh, and what were the challenges that you faced when you actually did the transition?
Yeah, it's great, Prem, that you've met Professor Mantram. He's an outstanding individual. Yeah, there's not enough good things I can say. He is at UT Austin, not Texas A&M, though. In terms of challenges, as I mentioned, I had to learn to speak a different language. All these core courses that are integral to material science. I tell my students these days, structure of materials, thermodynamics. Thermodynamics taught from a different perspective. If you're a mechanical engineer or a material scientist or a chemical engineer, if you take a thermo textbook, it changes in flavor. The mechanical engineers do heat engines. The chemical engineers do reactor design and controls. And then what's the third one? Material science is a lot about how do you use kinetics to cheat thermodynamics, which tells you that something cannot be done, and they sort of frame it around those questions. So without learning the language, I could not survive. So 2 years of coursework and a qualifying exam, and that was hard. I had an amazing professor, uh, Dr. Lou Rabenberg, who passed away a few years ago, who taught me structure of materials. That's easily the worst class I've taken, in the sense that he designs the coursework in such a way that you will want to quit the class. And those who stay till the end, you become very close to him, and his mind works in different ways. I feel, compared to mere mortals, because in material science we talk about how atoms come together to form what we call structures, and that structure is what gives a material its properties. Whether this material is an electrical conductor or an insulator, is it strong, or is it brittle, right? Mechanically speaking. So that course talked to us about why structures form, how do they form, how do you classify the structure. And there's a lot of three-dimensional thinking from a two-dimensional textbook in that class, and most of us couldn't do that mapping, but his brain does that live in a class. So if you can get over all the other nonsense, he was an amazing influence
So I'm
on us.
assuming you got to the end of the course.
I did. Yep.
So, as a follow-up question,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, you want to mention, or
No, Prem. What I was saying is that it was hard. I mean, one of the ways he teaches people, which I tried to do in my class, my students would revolt if I do that. It's like almost like osmosis. He dumps all this information from the end of the textbook on you at the very beginning, and then you are flummoxed. But if you can kind of piece together the pathway through it, then you make it to the end. Once he gave us an assignment which he knew was wrong, and my biggest achievement was figuring out it was wrong. So yeah, go ahead, Prem. Yeah.
So as a follow-up question, this is a little bit of technical question. So what are the how far has material characterization helped advance the field of material science in your opinion?
Characterization is seeing, right? And seeing is believing. And for a scientist, there's no bigger or more significant tool than being able to see something. And in the beginning, it was just about seeing. That's where things like electron microscope showed us atomic columns. And hey, it is true. Atoms make up materials, and the structure changes, and you could map it, right? And then that was what is called XC2. You grow a sample and then you take it to this instrument and watch it. And I gave the example of electron microscopy, but there's also other tools, right? There's spectroscopy, there's X-ray diffraction, all sorts of ways in which you can characterize a specific attribute of the materials. But these days, it's gotten more interesting, because you can do it in situ. which is something my group does. In situ is, as a transformation is happening in a material, you can watch it happen, right? And then there's operando, where this material is functioning inside a device, let's say a lithium-ion battery electrode, and you can watch that transformation in the structure live as a battery is cycling, charging and discharging. And so that's what they call in situ operando studies. And what my group does is we use synchrotron X-rays. These are very powerful X-rays that can sort of give us resolution on the atomic scale. So if the bond length between two atoms in a unit cell, a component of the structure, changes, we can see that happen in our experiments. And most of the work in my group is applying energy in a non-conventional method. So you're not heating a precursor, you're applying energy through directed sources. One example is microwaves, lasers and plasma are other examples, but we focus on 2 to 3 gigahertz microwaves. So as the microwaves are heating up this sample, a very complex dynamic sets in, where the precursors rearrange, and then they form intermediates, and then they finally form the crystal structure that you're looking for. And these reactions could be minutes to 1 minute to 15 to 20 minutes, and you're taking a scan on the order of seconds and sometimes sub-seconds, and watching that happen is phenomenal. And to me, characterization, especially characterization where you can watch the evolution of the structure of a material and maybe even its properties while it's functioning in a device. That's already here. I wouldn't call it the frontier, but doing it under, for instance, some materials like biological samples have to be maintained in some sort of a humid environment, or they need a liquid media, or some samples need cryogenic conditions to operate. And there's a lot of work in lithium-ion batteries where they want to keep the temperatures cold enough so that they can control the kinetics and watch it happen. In these conditions, doing these sort of in situ characterizations or operando characterizations is where the field is and where it's going to continue to evolve. And you're also introducing the time domain now. So you're seeing sort of the temporal response of the material, or a temporal history of the material, and you can collect it and you can learn from it. So machine learning algorithms are now sort of flowing into material science. And if you look at the old experiments, my students would collect this data, an experiment running 30 minutes, and it's like 2 years of analysis. So you do one synthesis and you publish one paper. Now, some of my students are automating, and algorithms are doing the analysis so that you're not doing it after the fact. You can do it live, and maybe if something is not going well, you can intervene or change the conditions and so on. And that's called autonomous experimentation. And the goal is materials discovery. We're not there yet, but I'm part of an initiative throughout the US, which brings together national laboratories, academics, companies, to look at how do you bring in AI/ML into these fields to help us do our job not only more efficiently, but also help us make discoveries, right? Serendipitous discoveries, maybe on a faster time scale, right? That's the goal.
So one thing I wanted to congratulate. So you got a grant recently. I saw this on your page from where you have a couple of universities, like University of Central Florida and 2 other universities. So I come from University of Central Florida. That's why I remember. Right. So what is that? What is the thrust of that grant, and what are you hoping to achieve from that?
Yeah. So it actually comes back to Prem's characterization question. So for many years, we've been studying how microwaves influence materials. And it was hard to develop instrumentation that can watch how the structure changes while you apply another form of radiation, and then collect all this data, in the loop, and complete the cycle. So we worked on this, and there's one place where radiation wreaks havoc, and that's in outer space. If you are going to send satellites and spacecrafts and humans, we need to understand the tremendous impact of radiation and different types of radiation. You have gamma rays, you have high energy ions, protons, and they all are prominent at different heights heights above the Earth's surface. So this grant was about taking all the tools that we developed and applying it to semiconductors when they are subjected to different types of radiation. And it is a combination of trying to understand what happens when radiation influences these semiconductors, which are the backbone of
Correct.
electronics, right? But the other part is also about if you can understand and predict the damage, can you do something to heal the damage? So it is a multi-university research initiative. It is led by Penn State. I am the CMU lead and more of the one aspect of the characterization lead.
Yeah, so talking about this, I think it's called RadHard, radiation hardened devices. So because my previous company, Infineon, they had a lot of semiconductor devices that had to go into the spaceships, and so it's called RadHard. I think that is a term, radiation hardened, so that whatever ions are bombarded to it still functions within a degree of accuracy.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this particular grant is more theoretical. So one of the challenges we all face and in the community is we know that defects are the reason thermodynamically the materials exist. Without defects and that entropy term, no material would be stable. So we all know that there's no perfect crystal, no matter how you grow them. But when you intentionally create defects or damage, we don't really have a sort of an unified theory to understand it at different multiple scales. So this grant is also about understanding the role of defects and creating sort of a fundamental framework around them. So as Atul mentioned, right, there's a lot of work and there's a lot of materials that have been developed that are radiation hardened, but we still don't understand what happens in these materials and in other materials when they're subjected to defects. So there might be a portion of the grant that also looks at applying that theory into devices and applications. But these sort of multi-university grants are more fundamental than applied. And I think more than radiation, radiation is definitely at the heart of the problem, but it's also about creating a defect in materials theoretical framework.
So moving a little away from technical,
just take this.
I had a question, and then maybe you can open the floor. So in software engineering and generally tech, so we have this term called imposter syndrome, where you always feel like you're not doing the best that you can. I feel that every day at work. I look at my colleagues and see them working. They're always online, right? And I feel like the amount of code that they commit is like more frequent than I do. So I always have this feeling of imposter syndrome. And in your chapter also, you talk about imposter syndrome. So have you faced that, and how have you overcome that feeling?
I have it right now, so I haven't overcome it. Every day is different, right? And you think you've overcome something, and then something else is thrown in your face, right? So, for a long time, I've, been of the opinion that, okay, this is something that only I have, or only women have, or only people of a certain race have, or whatever. And then I realized that everybody has it. And I think in some cases it's amplified more than others. As a girl, I grew up being told that I cannot. There was no circumstance where I was told I can, except, you can get married. Yes, that is something you should and you will, and you are good at, right? Other than that, I'm sorry to be blunt, but that was what was told to me. So I think it's a journey. Every colleague of mine in the department, when we've had these sessions talking about mentoring and our DEI initiatives, has opened up and said, yes, I am a chaired professor here. I've been at CMU for 30 years, or I'm the department head, or I'm the dean. I still have imposter syndrome. And I sometimes think it's, the more ambitious you are and the more you want to do things well and do things right and to learn and grow and succeed, the more you judge yourself harshly, and then this thing comes up. So I think it's to find a balance where you can be driven and you can keep improving, but at the same time you try not to second guess yourself too much.
Right.
But it's a journey. Yeah.
Just to add on thing, I think, sorry.
Good.
Just to add on, like, it's always good to have some part of it so that some amount of humility also remains with you, because on the other end of the spectrum, you could have folks like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, like everyone else is an imposter. What I say is only true.
No,
So
the-
I think those two examples have a lot of imposter syndrome. They have a different way of masking it, right? And some people are very good at masking it.
So the idea in US is fake it till you make it, right? So
Yeah.
So I have a question. My brother, he's currently doing his bachelor's in mechanical engineering in UT Austin.
Okay.
And like many people might be there in India wondering whether to apply for bachelor's or to do a master's in the US. What do you recommend as an academician?
Before you answer, just to add on to that, because from your experience, you have taken some work time before pursuing your master's and before committing yourself to research. So is there also like a fine timing post your graduation? Like, is it better to have some experience before you get into research, or is it good to pursue that first? Like, what would be a good timing also from a student's journey?
Sorry, and to add to that, one more question.
Okay. The three
So-
parts.
I heard about a transfer student program when I was studying my first year in SCT. So do Carnegie Mellon University have a transfer program where the students can transfer from SCT during their first year and continue their studies in Carnegie Mellon?
Okay, so let me start with Tarek's question first, because I think I deal with that more on a regular basis. My students, whether they're undergraduate or master's or PhD students, they at different times have had this question in different forms. Do you take some time off after your studies, whether it's undergrad or master's or even PhD, and go into a different sort of domain? And in our case, we give the example of industry a lot. I would be biased and say that yes, you should do it, because I think those 4 years that I spent working made me more confident, in the sense that no matter how big a challenge, I can break it down and then take one part and then work on it systematically till the end. I think that part of my character comes from working after undergrad, and it also made me sure, like, because by the time I started my master's, I knew this is what I wanted. I knew there was no turning back, right? If you haven't had that experience, you might always think that this isn't good for me, and I can easily quit and go back. And to give the example of that difficult course, a lot of the students who started with me were fresh out of undergrad, and some of them couldn't take it, and two of them quit and went back to companies that they were working for before they moved in. And that may not be the right example, but in my perspective, taking that time off, even if it is to spend a year doing nothing, if you can afford it, is going to be helpful for you to sort of figure out who you are and what you want to do. Masters is 2 years. It's not a long period of time, but financially for many people, it could be a significant commitment. So you should be sure, right? PhD is a journey, and it can be 4 to 6 years of your time. It's a marriage at that point, right? With someone, mostly your advisor, in terms of growing up as an individual and becoming a seeker of knowledge, right? So you should be sure for that. So in my opinion, take all the time you need and be sure. To your second question, Prem, in my knowledge, every department in CMU does their own thing. Every school in CMU does their own thing. At least in our department, you need some sort of MOU or some sort of understanding between our department and another university's equivalent department or program before we allow these exchanges to happen formally. But that said, I do get emails from students all the time from all over India and other countries where they are in their, third or fourth year of undergrad and they want to come do an internship in their lab. Some of my colleagues encourage it. Like when I was at MIT, that was very popular. People would just come spend 6 months there. In CMU, in my department, I haven't seen it to be very prominent. I'm not very fond of it because mine is an experimental lab. When someone comes and we spend 6 to 8 months training them, and if they're gone at the end of 9 months, I mean, there is,
Zero
nothing much.
ROI.
Oh yeah, beyond ROI, it just doesn't
And both
help
sides.
anyone. Yeah, the student doesn't learn much, and we have spent all this time and money, and we haven't, benefited either. And then there was another question, right? Or did I answer all of them?
I think that
I
was
think I
all.
answered.
Yeah, I think that was.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it kind of covered it.
Yeah.
But I just want to follow up to that, just
Mhm.
on the part that you mentioned, discovery, like discovering what you like, because in today's world, everyone wants to know, like, what is that one thing I should learn to succeed?
Yeah.
Whereas you are a person who have tried to learn everything around a problem to find a comprehensive solution. So during undergraduate, where you actually like pace, because I'm one person who still haven't found out what is my sweet spot. I've done my engineering, I've done my MBA, I've tried to do different things in life. So in that journey of discovering what you like to do or what are you passionate about, are there things you can do to like trial and error or any other things you can keep doing to discover your sweet spot or what you like to do?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't figured out what I want to do either. I mean, my research group began studying how materials respond to electromagnetic radiation, and then we are now making this segue into trying to figure out, how that radiation effects can be healed in materials. And then we've also made segue into other areas. We make sensors for biomedical applications. We make lithium-ion batteries. So there's a lot of diversity in our research portfolio. I do some work in AI/ML and 3D printing, or what they call additive manufacturing. So it really is hard to say that any person in this world has found their mission, right? And especially something like knowledge, you are never
No,
done.
I think I think the problem is that your brain is always curious. You want to find out something new. Like I'm kind of happy where I am right now. So
Yeah. But I would challenge you, Atul, by saying that I'm sure in your work you are finding ways to be creative. This whole initiative is an example, right?
Correct,
It is
yeah.
not entirely technical, but you are creating a dent in the universe in another space, right?
Right.
So yeah, you're not right, Atul. You're still creative and challenging.
So I have one more question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Since you have done your PhD in the US, and people in the how did you deal with the funding part and about the hassles of life in the United States while you were doing your PhD? Because often, I very often hear people about not getting sufficient funding and managing their life in the US or in the North American countries. So how did you manage to endure? Because I myself have plans to do PhD in the future, but like I'm like concerned. So what do you suggest to aspiring PhD students who want to pursue PhD in the US?
Yeah. Are you asking as a student or as someone after graduation, or what part of the journey is the one that you would like to focus on?
Like from the standpoint of either a student who want to pursue a PhD in the US or as a professional, working professional who desires to do PhD in the
Oh,
future.
I see. Yeah. I think the bottom line here is you should never pay for a PhD. You should get paid while you do a PhD. If any PhD program, exactly. If any PhD program asks you for money, run. run as quickly as you can away from them, because at least in our university, in the STEM programs, I could be wrong about non-STEM programs in what I am saying here. In STEM programs, when we make an offer in my department, it is fully funded for 5 years. I mean, even if you are not going to work with that PhD advisor for after 2 years, the department would cover your expenses in terms of tuition and stipend. So it gives students a 5-year guarantee to do their best work. Obviously, they have to cross the other hurdles, like they need to take all the coursework, maintain a certain GPA, pass the qualifying exam, and do work, publish, and be in good standing. But you should not have to worry about your stipend or your tuition. So finding the right program, finding the right advisor is critical. So so that's number one. You should not have to take out a loan, for instance, right? Expenses, yeah, that is tough, and cost of living is going up. When I was a student, Austin was this weird little town that was always weird, and that's it. But now Austin is one of the most expensive cities in the US to live in. Austin, Texas,
it's
right?
all of these tech companies, like
Yeah, people like you, right?
Yeah.
But my point is, many programs provide additional stipends or scholarships. International students are at a disadvantage because they cannot apply for the large ones like the National Science Foundation or the Department of Defense fellowships because they are non-citizens, right? But there are other foundations and internal fellowships. I tell my students, come here, publish at least one paper, boost up your resume, and in 2 years you can start applying for these fellowships. So, I mean, I think I have the distinction of being a faculty member where almost all my students, including non-US citizens, have fellowships, that sort of supplement just the stipend. They are competitive and it's difficult. So, I mean, if you have a family, this gets even more tricky,
difficult.
right? Because then you have to look at expenses, childcare, and all of that. So, I mean, my advice is that definitely go for a program that pays you the stipend and tuition. And these days, there are graduate student organizations demanding that students are paid a good wage, right? A good stipend, not something that can barely get them, an apartment in the Bay Area, for instance. So, do your research before you commit to an institution, and a PhD advisor. That person can, it can make or break your life,
Yeah.
right? In a way of speaking. And then the other questions will fall in place. It will be tough until you find that first paying job. I didn't have kids at that point. Me and my husband could, do our own thing, follow our own careers. So we didn't have that part of the equation, that challenging part of the equation at that point. We do that now, and we know how hard it is. So, you know, in the end, if you believe in an area and you really want to do it, it will happen. Go for it, but never pay for a PhD. That is just wrong.
We haven't heard from Hari today. I just want you to hear how his voice is. So maybe Hari, you can ask a question.
Yeah, usually I ask a lot of questions, but most of my questions are already covered by Tariq and Prem. I still have some open-ended questions, but I don't want to drag this whole podcast more. So let's get into non-technical stuff. Let's forget about all this. And what is your other interest area? Yeah, how do you do? What is your hobbies? Do you travel?
Yeah, it's been a while.
She is traveling right now. She's in Ontario.
Yeah,
in
she's
Canada.
traveling right now.
Yeah, believe me, that's just for the kids. I mean, thank you, Hari. No one has asked me that for a while now, what my hobbies are. It's been sort of a, it's been busy. I think I like to mindlessly zone out in front of whichever streaming channel has a good science fiction show. I'm a huge fan of Stranger Things.
Okay.
I'm watching Foundations on Apple TV. In the late in the evenings. these days. So I would say science fiction is my, whether it's reading or watching, whatever junk is out there. If it's science fiction, I think I'll watch it.
Does it
And
also
I think
include like genres like Dark?
Hmm?
The-
Have you seen the German
Dark.
series Dark?
I didn't like.
Dark.
I actually didn't like it because I tried it, or maybe it's a whole subtitle that
Yeah.
the translation thing.
My
Um,
wife stopped watching it because she couldn't understand what was happening.
You written need a notebook to write it down. The
You need to-
list.
yeah, it was
That's like the
it was
best.
mind-boggling to me. So, but there are a lot of shows that I find they're not just interesting, but they also make you think. And sometimes I get crazy ideas from them. So
So then you must have read like a lot of Michael Crichton.
I did as a child. I read a lot of Michael Crichton's books. This Congo, Prey, and
Yeah.
Jurassic
I
Park.
I do I enjoy like a lot of the things you're saying like really resonates with me. So I have a ton of questions, but I will not ask any of those
You
No,
you're
you
because it's
al-
should.
not
You
gonna
should.
happen.
you're allowed
No,
one
like we
question.
can
You can
connect
ask
on
one
that
question.
later. Yeah, but like a general question I wanted to ask was like when you went into PhD and then research and stuff, did you like encounter a lot of women academicians, and do you feel like there's more now? Like there are more women in this field now, like in your 20 or so years?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a PhD student in UT Austin, our department had one female faculty professor.
Wow.
And it, yeah, that was that was hardly a statistic, right? But now, I mean, 7, 8 years ago when I started at CMU, I think there were two. I was the third. And now we have like, I'd say 12 in a faculty of around 40, which is still low, right? But it is
Yeah.
going up in the right direction. My postdoctoral advisor was the first female faculty member to get tenure in MIT in chemical engineering, Professor Karen Gleason. So, I've had the opportunity to work with some extraordinary mentors, and that continues as Professor Jayanti Murthy. She's the first person of Indian descent to become the president of a university at Oregon State. She was a
Oh, wow.
mentor. So all of them were people I watched and were inspired by, and I'm happy to see the numbers go up, but we are not anywhere near parity yet. If we have
Right.
45, hopefully we'll have more of an even balance. But I'm happy to see that my department is very committed to bring up those numbers. And it's not only about hiring; it's also about mentorship and making sure that they can not just survive the job but also thrive the job. A lot of people think as a faculty member you only teach, and that's a misconception. As I said, only 25% of my time is assigned to teaching. The rest is fundraising, bringing in money, and running research programs. So it's like a small business
Right.
in addition to teaching and all those responsibilities. So you need a lot of support, and I've been blessed with a lot of mentors of both genders, actually, male and female, and I'm very, very grateful to that. I know a lot of people haven't been that fortunate. So we need to bring in more women, but also provide them mentorship. And now, as I see with childcare, it is what can make or break your career
Right.
as a woman. Yeah.
So this thing about
Sorry,
Tari, go ahead.
no, it's kind of segue. So there was something that was curious in your profile or chapter I was reading, like the game-based teaching where people could visualize things, which makes them understand more stuff. Because I remember even when learning structural materials back in undergrad, it used to be a nightmare because most of the things we had to learn as is we couldn't visualize many of the things. Some theorems or some things.
Is this a Minecraft thing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Minecraft thing.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do was, is there something, some public sources where students can try to visualize what they're learning? Are there public sources like that? Or are there sources where teachers can bring in such creativity in the current syllabus we have in current universities? Are there teachers that can use creative methods? Is there any insights to that?
Yeah,
I want to add on.
yeah.
Yeah,
Go
sorry, I just want to add on to that since you mentioned about visualization, right? In future, are we planning to go into metaverse for learning?
Yeah, that's where everyone is headed, right?
Yeah.
So why not? I mean, to answer your question, Tariq, there are existing modules free of cost, where which are being used in what they call K through 12 schools here for learning chemistry and physics, and many of them are. They're even adapted to run on phones. I mean, one example I can give is what my course was inspired by. It's something called Polycraft. It's a mod or a module within Minecraft that was made by the University of Texas, Dallas. And this module is I think it's a module that teaches chemistry, primarily about the chemistry of polymers. How do you make them, how do you process them, and so on. So there are a lot of examples already out there. I believe the challenge is more about how do you present it to a class. I mean, I did this experiment where I would teach my course with Minecraft in some modules, and in other modules I'd keep it more traditional, and then I would swap it every other year. And you would think that students would love it, right? But the response is always mixed. That's because not everybody wants to learn with these, new tools, and that's okay. Some of it is just about orienting them to the process. And in a short course, you don't have time for all of that. And then students feel like, oh my God, I have this additional thing to learn in addition to everything else, right? So we still don't have a lot of let's say, methodologies that can guide an instructor to introduce such tools in the classroom, assess whether or not they are actually working in the classroom, and then report on that to the community at large, right? So that's the problem. The tools are around, some people use it, some don't. There's no real method, or and I do see now some of my colleagues who work in education, in computer assisted learning, and human computer interaction here at CMU, who have sort of made it their mission to look at how kids learn and how tools help them, and what are the boundaries for
So
those.
this topic is very close to me because my sister is actually doing a PhD in education design at Penn State.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So and
Yeah.
one of our juniors actually from 2014 batch, Atul Sudesh, his research at UT Dallas is around the statistical analysis of learning outcomes. So basically,
I think I know him.
Oh, you know him?
I might have been on. I think I might have been on a proposal with him,
Oh,
because
is it?
I was
Okay.
on a research. Yeah, I was on a research proposal to the National Science Foundation with UT Dallas. I think I know him.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the name escapes me, but I think I know. Yeah.
Yeah, he's working at the lab called Coins, where they're trying to come up with models where they're trying to assess what is the outcome,
Yeah.
and based on that, the designers can make their products better, like the education products better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that completely changes the perspective as well, because unlike most of us, I think, to survive, at least I can say personally, mug up a lot in order to get through the exams and get through that minimum viable product to pass mark or first class.
Yeah.
But then once you start visualizing things, your perspective completely changes.
Exactly.
The way
And
you learn things, the way you understand.
that proposal was interesting. It was this large grant that UT Dallas, this particular student's professor was heading, and they're sort of people who do the neuroscience of learning, I think,
Correct.
in
Yeah.
that group, and they had teams who had developed these mobile apps that can help people in non-English speaking communities, especially in the South, in the border areas of the United States, learn English, enough vocational English to get them through a job interview or to get them through jobs, right? And there was this app that they designed with a game that was teaching them English, kind of like how Duolingo made it a game to learn different languages, right? Made it fun. So yeah, I mean, we didn't get funded, but that was this amazing experience just working with that talented team of people. So yeah, I do believe learning has to change if we have to solve the problems of the future, the problems that we have right now, not of the future. We need a different type of workforce to be trained. And I think the new generation is inspired by their passion, for the things they believe in. And I don't think learning or rote memorization is going to inspire them ever. So we need to, find creative and transformative ways to educate this new, group of children. Yeah.
So
That's because, sorry, until that happens, I think the only option is there are few exceptional students in class who can do that visualization. So go and learn from them.
Yeah,
In a way we can understand.
Yeah, and I think mentorship, peer-to-peer learning, all of that matters. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
so.
Ashwini, go ahead.
Sure. Do we have time to ask another question?
We have plenty of time because I took I took I took Google
Okay.
Premium. We can talk as long as Reeja is fine with it.
Yeah.
Finishes, we have time.
So I have a question which is more for me, but I think it will help others also. Like, I've always been into research. There have been previously 2 points in my life where I could have gone into a PhD, but I didn't. And I'm hoping, like you said, right? Like, it's a big commitment, and I wasn't sure then. The whole reason I came to Canada is because I wanted to do a PhD. So I'm hoping there will be a point again soon where I decide, like, okay, now is when I want to get back in. So did you, when you were doing your PhD, like specifically as a woman, like what struggles did you face, and what do you see women now getting into PhD would face in like their journey in doing a PhD?
Yeah, I mean, I think mine was different because I never imagined I would do a PhD. I never imagined I would become a faculty or teacher of some sort. My father taught, നാട്ടിലൊക്കെ പറയില്ലേ ട്യൂഷൻ എടുക്കും.
Yeah.
I absolutely detested teaching anyone because that was just my personality at the time. And I don't think I was allowed to, do anything more than undergrad, frankly. So things happened, some of it luck and some of it circumstance. So by the time I'd made a decision to do a PhD, um, I was prepared for the challenges because in life I had dealt with some interesting challenges to get to that point. And I write more about it in the book chapter that I had shared with Atul. But um, I don't know if my challenges were specifically women. Because I was a woman, for me to get to a point where I could do a PhD, I had to convince a lot of people back home that I can do this in spite of being a woman, right? But once I started, yes, there wasn't enough representation. Like I said, not many people in the faculty, but there were some incredibly smart women who were in my cohort together, and they inspired me every day. One of them started a company that was acquired recently by one of the largest hobby 3D printing companies. Others work for Tesla, SpaceX, and so on. So that group inspired me. And in terms of challenges, I had a colleague or a student in my class who had a young child at that time who was about 10, and watching her navigate as a single parent, bringing that child up, who's now awesome, an awesome teenager, and a PhD was mind blowing for me. And I think I just saw these incredible people, and in my mind it was, oh, I can do it. I can do it. And I think one of the mistakes I made when I started as a faculty member was also that I thought everybody can do it. And I did reach situations where I made mistakes and I pushed people too hard, and in some cases it was bad. Yeah, it's just because my mindset was, oh, everyone can do it, I did it, or my friends did it. But now I realize that everyone does things differently. Every student needs a different way of mentoring, a different way of inspiring, and as a teacher and as an advisor, that was my journey.
So one thing about companies also, like when you are a new startup, you imagine that somebody that you hire will work at 100% of the way that you work, but never assume that. You should always assume that that person is going to work at 60% of what you work, and then hire two people. So like we always consider that somebody we hire will be up to our standard, we should never expect that. Like,
For you, it's a dream, and for him, it's a job.
correct. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true. So
yeah. And
Reeja-
then, if I have a minute, I would like to come back to something that Tariq asked about. How do you keep finding things to inspire yourself? And I think as a faculty member, that's your challenge, right? Each idea is a project that can span sometimes decades, and you have to remain in love with it, right? And for me, there are times when I would come back and say things like, I'm quitting today. And I think everybody who knows me takes it at face value. So she's not going to do that. What has helped me is that sometimes when I'm really down in the dumps, I read a lot of books, random books, nothing technical, fiction, non-fiction, whatever, or I binge on TV shows, science fiction. I try to drown out my mind and then come out at the other side with an inspiration. Some of the ideas that I currently work on came out of that sort of knowledge detox journey, because I think furthering, the boundaries of knowledge, in my opinion, is one of the most sacred pursuits of a human being, and anyone can do it, and you don't have to be a researcher or or a faculty designate to do it. We can all do it. So and I think my challenge has been to give that opportunity that I've been given all the respect that it deserves, and that usually involves binging on Netflix, so that I don't run myself out.
I think somewhere I read that when you read stuff that is outside of your domain, you are creating new neural networks in your brain, and that might help you to solve some problem in your, like, maybe not now, maybe not in 5 years, maybe 10 years down the line. You might think, hey, I saw something 10 years ago and I can use that. So maybe
Exactly.
This really reminds me of Sheldon and Big Bang Theory, like going to children's play area, listening to Howard, or doing everything else than study to find solutions to problems you already face.
Yeah. Maybe it's our way of sort of resetting the brain, right? Taking the trash out.
using the other part, like one is the analytical and one is the creative part, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think
it's the right parts.
Yeah, I think we can slowly wrap up. So just one last thing. So I know you're very big on mentorship. So for us as an advice to students, like, how can we better improve our framework so that kids can reach out to us to ask us questions? Like maybe they reach out to you for PhD or to me for masters and programming and all. Like we are having a hard time getting people engaged, like students engaged. If you have any ideas, that would be great. And like it doesn't have to be now, like we can talk about that later also.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it some thought and come back to you with more ideas. Maybe I don't know, everyone's busy, and in-person experiences, right? Going back and seeing them and having a workshop or a seminar or something along those lines might be the most impactful, because I remember when I was a student, sometime a year before we graduated, we had some alumni come in, and some of them had been recently successful in the IAS exams, for instance, and they were giving us guidelines on how to do interviews with confidence and so on. And it was inspirational to see them interact and talk to them. So that could be, I know that is, just the opposite of the virtual experience, and it's very hard logistically to,
Correct, yeah.
to pull through. But that's something that came to my mind. And I mean, mailing lists and things like that spam everyone, right? After a while, it doesn't work. But if you have a website and people can send messages, and you can use keywords to sort of, filter it down into the most appropriate person, right? That could be one way. I am, I would say, tethered to emails. I would respond to every email. Any other form of communication, as Atul very well knows, not so much. Right?
I think I asked you if I could call you a couple of times, and you were like, "No, let's just text."
Yeah, yeah.
No, but your emails, you would always you're always prompt on replying. So thank you so much. I think let's wrap up. It's been an hour, and I think this is definitely a very good session. I really
Thank
enjoyed.
you.
I mean, now I know that I still haven't found my peace. I still have some more soul searching to do.
Yeah, we should all do that, right? And keep doing that for the rest of our lives. And that's what makes life interesting, right?
Yeah.
'Cause we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, thank you to all of the hosts, Ashwini, Tariq. Hari texted me; he had to drop off. He didn't want to say goodbye and make us stop, so that's why he didn't say goodbye. Prem also, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, and definitely, Reeja, it was a great time talking to you. Thank you for taking your time out to talk to us. Hopefully, you can people watch this and they'll be motivated to maybe at least reach out to you or think
And
about
I'm sure
PhD.
she'll get a flurry of emails after this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to. I mean, first of all, thank you, Ashwini, Tariq, Atul, Prem, and Hari, and thank you for your questions and thank you for this wonderful discussion. I'm happy to help people who reach out to me, and if someone reaches out to you, feel free to share my my official email address, and I can guide them to the best of my ability. And all of you, I know Ashwini said that there's you want to touch base offline. Happy to do that, and we can talk. And I do hope someday you will make the decision to join that program, the PhD program, on
Yeah.
your own time.
No, it was a pleasure talking to you. Like, even though we are not in the same domain, like a lot of things you said, like I've already either thought it or like it resonates with how I approach life. So that's why I was like, there's so many similarities. It would be like great to talk to you otherwise also, like even without the podcast or the technical background still.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it
Let's
was a pleasure.
be
And
friends. Yeah.
yeah, let's be
So,
friends.
And that applies to everyone here too. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
actually, my friend and I, my friend is Nirmad. So we started a PhD and postdoc, to help WhatsApp and Telegram group to help aspiring PhD candidates. So we might have some candidates who might be probably. Can I share your email with them so
Yep.
that they
Yep.
can?
Yeah. Yeah. I will respond to all emails, but just on FYI, the semester starts August 29th, and things get really busy, and then I have some travel for the next one semester, which is in our case about 4 months. I may not be as prompt, but I will definitely respond. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have a verbal
Great.
commitment. Great. Yeah,
A verbal contract is agreed on.
the contract
Yeah,
is
I will
settled.
help to the best of my abilities. Yeah. But thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. And
Yeah.
Atul, thank you so much for for being so patient, and
No
also
problem.
for for
Persistent.
pulling
That's
this
the word. I'm not patient. I'm persistent.
Yeah. I was gonna say persistent.
which is highly underrated but extraordinarily important skill.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
everyone. Thanks,
Take care,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a good rest
Thanks,
of your
everyone. Have
weekend.
a good
Have a good
weekend.
Take care.
You too.
Good
Bye bye.
Bye.